Just open this up here. Here's what we have here. You want to check that your trigger can come back as far as it needs to. Sometimes the screw to the trigger housing, right here, that screw, could prevent this trigger from going back as far as it needs to. Right now it's kind of stiff. See how it holds in their place, the spring with the trigger. Everything's perfect right now. So I'm not going to mess with that other than testing wise. So if I was to pull this forward, how long before the trolley can actually jump out of the trigger? So you push this forward here and you touch the trolley underneath just slightly to see if it will pop over. And then you let go of the trigger to see if it will grab it. And you may want to do this test while the gearbox is closed. What you'll do is you'll use the selector plate or a screwdriver to pull the cutoff back, and it will lift up the trolley. So you can see here it's a little difficult for me to get underneath there. I just need to get to the right spot. You can test this by looking at the back too. If it's too high, what will happen is the trolley cannot even pop out behind it. So your semi-auto would malfunction. So again, I'm going to touch it slightly. So that means it should be working. You can see it re-grabs it. Again, check with the gearbox closed to see if it re-grabs it, because sometimes when everything's aligned perfectly, there's pressure here and so forth, and that won't work. You also want to look out for when you pull the trigger, this screw should be tight so that the trolley doesn't get stuck with pressure. If it does, you could have to do some modification on the inside to make it the this trigger body right here stop putting pressure on the trolley so it doesn't get stuck. It could also be your trigger contacts. They hold the trolley in position, so you need to check that. And you can see there the screws tighten down and nothing of a problem there. You also want to check your safety lever right here. Make sure that it goes up, not scraping this. If it scrapes the front of this trigger, what happens is the trigger will get stuck and malfunction when the gearbox is closed. So you want the slightest bit of space between here. I mean, it's very tiny space so that it can move all the way up. That way, when you have safety on, you can't pull the trigger. It's pretty stiff. Another thing to check is right here at this location and your shell. Sometimes the other side of the shell will have reinforcement right here, and that will prevent the trigger from functioning properly in this area. Here you can see how the trigger starts because of this location. It's touching right onto it. It stops right at the trolley point where it grabs, and it has the safety lever not hitting into it. So this is very compatible right now. So if I was to pull this and just slightly tap the bottom, you can see it comes up. And then you can also test by pulling and rotating your selector, or excuse me, your issue already right here. So you got to make sure your cutoff goes all the way forward. The reason it's not going forward is probably because of there's nothing to hold it there. The spring on the selector plate is pretty strong. So if I was to hold this here, then check to see the cutoff right here goes underneath the trolley and can be grabbed. So you want to pull this forward. You can even push the cutoff yourself there. Pull this forward and look and see if it gets grabbed. So I'm going to hold this, pull, and from what I see, I couldn't see it actually getting grabbed. So, but we know from a test earlier that it should be getting grabbed. See right here, the cutoff does not want to go back. What you're going to want to do is test if the cutoff can come up. So you're going to give it slightly forced, and you can see, bam, it would work. So that's how you test all that. So the only issue I see right now I've been able to close the gearbox with this is just in the right position, the right height. Sometimes it's too much, sometimes these are in the way, so you've got to check that. Now everything is meshing except for the selector plate, so I will have to work on that. But this video clearly shows how to address issues with this. If you are doing specialized parts, you're putting in here and something doesn't work, you could do modifications to the trigger right here, which I have done on this trigger. It's super glue with some polycarbonate plastic, and that allows this height to be a little bit more closer to the safety lever so that it will stop instantly. You can do modifications to the trigger here. You can cut down the side here so that this screw is not in the way. You can even slightly cut down the tip so that it's a lot easier for the trolley to bump out of place. That way when you shoot on semi, it will easily function properly. See, and it will give less wear to the trolley as well. Another thing you can do, before I forget to mention, is again, keep checking to make sure that when you pull your trigger, you pull it pretty tight and that it doesn't bypass the trolley. If it bypasses the trolley at this point, every time you pull the trigger all the way, you're going to be pretty mad because it's just going to bypass it. You can change the trigger out, or you can add some JB Weld over the top here, or add some to the trolley on the bottom. So you have to do all those kinds of things and just look at it, make sure everything's perfect. First thing is assemble the whole thing together, and you're going to simulate that you're using this in your body. Now, you don't want to just put it in the body and test with just the body. You also want to attach your pistol grip. The reason is because sometimes there's a force implied on the gearbox pulling it down tighter, and it can mess with your selector switch right here. So what you want to do is just go ahead and get your gearbox into position. And then once in position, just lock it in place like as if you're actually using it. Now these are some custom parts just put in together with this, so I'm already seeing an issue where I may not be able to get the gearbox in the body. With the selector plate, because earlier, I know the selector plate is going to be a little tight, and I'll show you why, but earlier I was trying to get this in, it was a little tight. Okay, so I got it in there. Now what you're going to do is secure it it seems that ow. It seems that it's in there very securely because of the selector plate. Now as I rotate here, you don't want to feel any resistance. As soon as you feel resistance, which I just did right now, there could be an issue where you have to check your selector on the inside or the selector plate. So what I'm looking at here is through down here, and as I turn to safe, it gets really stiff. Feels like it's going to break. See right here, I cannot make the turn. From safe to full auto, I can make the turn very easily, but I cannot go to safe. And I can see that the selector plate is going too much this way. If you're watching and you're looking at it, you can also see the safety levers moving incorrectly. What I think happened is when it bumped in here, it moved it out of position. So I'm going to go ahead and take these out real quick. So this is where safety should be, is like that. However, while it's in the body, it's doing this. It's going further. So you need to look at this here and make sure that it matches with this in here. Now this one in here looks a little bit fatter, so, or wider, I guess you could say. So because of that, I thought I saw a screw fall or something. Because of that, it will not turn correctly from what I can see here. So this looks a little wider in depth in here, and you can check it with a caliper. I can tell right away that this looks more like completely circular, kind of like a spear that's perfectly round. In here, it's not as well. It comes up higher and it's wider. So I'm thinking that that's why the issue is right away. You could take this screw out and change this. However, the issue I have is that I don't have access through here unless I break the glue that holds this in, because this just falls out. I don't feel like doing that. So what I could do here is modify this slightly, or change the selector plate back to what the original was that goes with this body. Okay, so the modification I'm going to make is, here's what's happening while it's in the body. I turn and it does that. So the modification I'm going to make is I'm going to take this and cut slightly down here so that it does not push it that far ahead. It should stop about there on this area. So I'm going to make a slight modification there. Okay, so after selector modification, we see that everything, the resistance is so slight now. I only took off a little bit, but you can see the safety, semi, and full auto. So when test here, put on semi, hold the trigger, and as you slowly turn, you can see right here there's resistance. Now, what you want to do is just rotate the selector gear until it pulls it for you. You can see the trolley bypassed. You hear it click. You let go of the trigger to see if it grabs it again, which it does. And you can test again. So rotate the selector gear, or a sector gear. Bam. You could even do this by switching to full auto right here, which it should bypass, but it doesn't. So it means it's it means sometimes that it doesn't press just enough, but the sector gear hits it. Also, while on semi or full auto, you want to make sure that you rotate the sector gear and there's no resistance at all, because it should not be hitting the trolley at all, which it is not. So everything is perfect at this point. Now I'm going to tighten down the screws, see if the selector plate works, and if it does, everything's good.